Whiskey. You either like it or you hate it. You've sipped it neat, on the rocks, or mixed in a cocktail, but have you ever wondered where that glass of whiskey came from? The world of whiskey making is huge. So today, let's talk all about distilleries. From mashing grains to aging in oak barrels, get ready to learn the secrets behind your favorite liquor. Well, whiskey is a golden brown distilled spirit made from fermented grain. It's aged in wooden barrels, giving it its signature flavors. Most whiskeys pack at least 40% alcohol by volume, or ABV. There are many types of whiskey, each with its own unique traits. They're often defined by where they're made, the grains used, or how they're aged. The taste? It's warm, spicy, sweet, with a hint of caramel. The name whiskey comes from the Gaelic phrase Uisce Bea, meaning water of life. Its exact origins are unclear, but grain spirits have been around in Europe for over 500 years. Some say whiskey began in Ireland around 1,000 years ago and was later introduced to Scotland by monks. The first records of Scottish whiskey making date back to 1494. When Europeans came to the Americas, they brought their distilling skills. Rum was made in New England by the 1600s. And by the 1700s, whiskey became essential in places like western Pennsylvania. Farmers found it easier to turn their grain into whiskey since it stored well and was easier to transport. Whiskey even played a role in U.S. history. In 1794, farmers rebelled against a whiskey tax. This eventually led to the Whiskey Rebellion. President George Washington had to send troops to restore order. Many whiskey makers moved west to Indiana and Kentucky, areas now famous for the craft. The industry boomed, peaking in 1911, but Prohibition in 1920 put a stop to legal whiskey production until it ended in 1933. Another production high came in 1951 with 800 million liters made. Today, the US produces around 400 million liters annually. The process of distillation started with basic setups: a heated container, a cooling tube, and a receptacle. Over time, pot stills refined the process. These are still used for whiskey in Scotland and Ireland. In 1826, Robert Stein introduced continuous distillation. This method is now standard for mass-produced whiskey. Whiskey's appeal is global. While the US leads in production and consumption, Scotch whiskey, or simply Scotch, remains the gold standard worldwide. You can't beat it. Whiskey starts with a few simple ingredients that work together to create its distinct character. The foundation of whiskey is a mash made from grains. Some common grains include malted barley, rye, corn, and wheat. Each grain influences the flavor and type of whiskey. For example, rye whiskey must have at least 51% rye in its mash, but Kentucky bourbon needs at least 51% corn. After